Bitch by Jason Bradford. Part 2, Big Bitch. Chapter 13, The Way Back. Summer 1997. Wanda lay in bed. The night was silent, and in its silence she found an unsettling stillness that screamed its quiet song. Bill's body heat was intense, and Wanda found it only added to the burden of her inability to find the comfort and peace that promised rest. She tossed and turned, and the silence seemed to grow louder. The covers that draped Wanda and Bill were heavy, heavier than normal. She felt as though she were being held down against her will, and her discomfort grew along with the loud silence that kept her mind racing. From outside, a garbage can toppled over. The rattle jarred her up, and she sat, listening intently. From within the darkness, Bill stirred slightly, then started snoring. Wanda knew nothing short of the house exploding would wake him up. She listened. The silence was finally just that, silent. A banging sound, the sound of the door on the wooden gate slamming shut. Wanda pulled the covers to the side and sat in bed with her feet on the floor, filling her bedside slippers. She stood up and pulled her robe over her nightgown. The robe was ivory silk and flowed loosely as she walked to the bedroom door, softly billowing out behind her. She turned to look back at Bill one last time, then her nightstand. She contemplated getting the handgun from within it, but decided not to. The screaming silence had put her on edge, and she knew that going for the gun would just be a reaction to the screaming. The back door opened, and Wanda stepped into her backyard. Suddenly, Bella, the dog that belonged to her granddaughter who lived directly next door, was barking. Startled, Wanda stepped out further, her light turning on with her motion. "Bella, hush!" Bella stopped barking, but her whining continued in a low hush. The back porch light spread out into the backyard and bathed the side of the house in its brilliance. The garbage can was on its side, and the back gate door was open. In her yard, Wanda caught sight of movement just before the wooden privacy fence. The fence door banged shut in the sudden breeze, but the wooden clap didn't faze her. She approached as the wind picked up, and her robe billowed out wickedly behind her as her long, blonde hair whipped against her face. Thunder rolled in the distance. The storm was approaching fast, and the static feeling in the air and the growing breeze itself promised the storm was going to be big. The clock in Wanda's house chimed. From within the safety of her bed, little Leah slept. A sudden ruckus from outside woke her. The sound of the garbage cans crashing to the ground and the slamming of her grandmother's gate pulled her from her slumber. Leah was 6 years old and was going to be a big sister. She was happy that she would have a brother, and she couldn't wait for Phil to arrive. She had been dreaming about him before she was woken. The little girl sat up in her bed when her dog Bella began to bark outside. Bella's barking was brief, but it worried Leah. She looked out her bedroom window, and the trees were bending and swaying about. Thunder rumbled from far away, but she could hear it. Leah opened the bedroom door and quietly, carefully, tiptoed to her back door and into the windy night. She ran to Bella, who was whining silently. Leah's blonde hair batted her face. Something was bothering the dog, and even at 6 years old, Leah had developed a bond strong enough to the German Shepherd that she felt worried and scared for her. Something on the other side of the wooden fence had Bella's attention. Leah walked slowly to it so she could see just what had Bella in such a panic into her grandmother's yard. The distant midnight chime of her grandmother's clock filled the night briefly, only to be quickly swallowed up by the hungry winds that swirled madly around the young child. Leah found her footing in a spot on the ground that allowed her to keep her balance while she peered through the 2 slats of wood in the fence. She could see her grandmother holding something that was kept secret from her, as it were wrapped in the fabric of Wanda's silk robe. Wanda let her robe fall, and it landed behind her. Then it whipped about in the night winds. Leah could finally see the secret, the mystery. It was a small child with ebony skin, and it was smaller than her. It was midnight, and by the end of the clock's toll, everyone's life was going to change forever. Present. Jack and Karen sat at the coffee shop at what had become their normal booth. The shop managers left the table anchor broken and misplaced against the opposite side of the booth to accommodate Karen's previous enormous frame. Jack sat beside Karen against the wall. On the bench beside Karen sat 3 small bags from a local clothing outlet. She wore a pale blue blouse with denim pants and flats. Her hair fell long and naturally, styled with no products or accessories. Star took their orders. Karen decided to try chai tea with extra cream. Jack, wearing thick sunglasses inside to hide his bright yellow eyes, ordered a hamburger, which was rare. Jack thought of the horror movies that portray werewolves and their dietary habits regarding rare and raw beef and poultry. He felt placed in a box marked stereotypical as he realized he ordered the rare burger. Part of his changes, he wondered. Of course it was. It was all in the neatly labeled little stereotypical box. He felt like Star was profiling him when she made eye contact during his request. She smirked a bit, or perhaps he imagined it. "So, I had a thought," Jack said to Karen. Karen smiled. She couldn't stop running her tongue over the surface of her new flat and smooth human teeth. "What's your thought?" she responded. "Why don't we bite Tyler and Bill and make them human?" Jack paused and thought for a second. "If I'm already beginning to change, would my bite work on them? Maybe you should bite them and me," Jack continued, running his tongue over the surface of his new sharp and jagged canine teeth. Karen's smile disappeared, and her face became solemn with offense. "What if you bit me again and we all stay a pack of wolves? There's no disgrace in being powerful creatures that we can become. You fell in love with one, after all." She paused before finishing. "You should be excited about your current changes and not consider the importance of it all less than it is." "I didn't mean to offend you. I didn't think about it," Jack answered immediately. "But I've been human for nearly 30 years. That's my entire life. It's something that I'm connected to. It'll take time for my mind to develop. I'm sorry, just be patient with me." Star arrived with their orders and placed each before them. Karen smelled the steam of her cup of chai tea. She leaned forward and licked the surface. She caught herself almost immediately, but not before she got 2 or 3 laps from her cup. She giggled as she noticed some customers smiling at her in her new human form. A young girl about 10 years old came over to the table. Karen could see the child's parents urging her on. When she reached the table, she asked, "Excuse me, Miss Karen, would it be okay if I took a selfie with you two?" Karen was touched that she maintained her fans even in her new human form. The young girl returned to the table with her parents. She showed them the latest photo, and her giddiness was abundant. Karen was also grateful that Boris's convincing of the townsfolk to keep their curiosities at a minimum also worked while she was in human form. No one was looking for their den, and no one was asking questions as to why she was human, since werewolves kept their beastly form from birth to death. She was a little shocked, but also relieved. She'd thank Boris again later. "I guess I just thought it would be easier if we were all in the same form," Jack offered. "Human or werewolf is irrelevant, I suppose." Jack's voice snapped her back to the moment. "You're actually right," Karen stopped. Jack could feel a bit of the unease from her. "What's wrong?" "I need you to know a small truth that I wanted to tell you this morning when you found me in the clearing like this." Karen looked down at her human body to signify that she was referring to her human frame. "Small truth?" Jack asked. "What small truth?" Karen raced through her mind, looking for the right words. Though the human tongue and English language came to her involuntarily and naturally, her ability to string sentences was still something she's going to have to catch up to her. "I turned Tyler into a werewolf on purpose." Jack didn't say anything. He stared at her as she hesitated over her next words. She finally found her sentence. "I was going to change you as well." She fell silent. Her expression was forlorn. "I am the last remaining werewolf that I'm aware of. Werewolves once thrived, and now... Why didn't you change me that night? The bear trap, following you to your house, it all felt like that was what I was supposed to be doing. Like we had always known each other, and at that moment, nothing else was supposed to happen, except for us to be together in that time and space," Karen explained. "Shortly before midnight, I realized there was a connection, a bond with you that I hadn't anticipated. It's a mystery. I didn't change you because I thought I'd look for clues about the mystery's answers. I wasn't sure if I'd find those answers if you weren't human, and those answers may be very important. And then midnight came, and even if I had bitten you, it wouldn't have mattered at that point. Tyler was already changed. I knew it before we returned to the woods with the shovel." "I get it," Jack told her. "You're trying to build up your kind again. I don't blame you." "Our kind. You're a werewolf forever now. The full moon is tonight, and you'll never be human again." She looked sad, as if she had stolen his humanity from him. "I'm sorry if this makes you feel less than you had before." "Hey, don't be sorry. You saved me. I was praying for something to happen. I was considering just leaving it all behind and running as far as I could, as fast as I could, far away. Jack paused briefly before admitting, "Besides, I also felt a strange connection to you. That connection compelled me to free you from the bear trap in the first place. You made me feel something I had never felt before, a bond of some kind." Karen's face started to show happiness again. "And I've been running towards something, chasing it. There's something special about this town, and it led me to you. Perhaps there was a reason you never left." "What do you mean?" Jack asked. "Boris, Bill, me," Karen began. "That thing I sensed watching us out in the woods, I know who she is. She's a guardian of werewolves and of the forest. Humans know her as Bigfoot or Sasquatch, and she's mythical too." Karen contemplated for a moment about sharing her history with Sasquatch, but she recalled so little herself. She knew that Sasquatch definitely raised her, but her memories were too vague for some reason. How would she explain it to Jack when she wasn't sure of all the details herself? She knew she felt a need to find Sasquatch again and to be with her. She had felt a familial bond from the moment she had the memory at the lake. She wouldn't tell Jack anything more about her for now until she knew more herself. "We're all magical creatures," Karen continued, "and we found ourselves drawn here, of all places, to your small town. Why do you suppose that is?" Karen inquired. Jack pondered her question. It was strange indeed, and with the feeling he got from the clearing that morning, his senses picking up on an air of magic within their den, he also wondered why. Why was his small town a magnet to mythical and magical creatures? "And there's something else," Karen whispered. Her voice trembled with fear, and she knew Jack would notice it. "What?" He put his hands over hers. "The reason we need to grow our pack is why I chose you and Tyler." Jack waited. "We need to grow to become stronger," Karen continued, "like an army." "Build an army?" Jack was taken by surprise. "What for?" "This place is the magnet, as I said." Karen lifted her teacup to her lips and took a sip. She set the cup back down. "How do I string this sentence?" Karen wondered. "I sense something else is being drawn here, and whatever it is, it's on its way." "What is it? What's coming?" The fear that had dripped from Karen's words was now soaked into Jack's words as well. The trembling of his voice took them both by surprise. Karen placed her other hand on top of Jack's to brace him. "Something wicked."